And yesterday's topic of Jihad al-Akbar and Jihad al-Asghar, number of resources, but the ones that I recommend the most is the 40 Hadith of Imam Khomeini and Spiritual Discourses by Shahid Mutahari. Both of these are available online, and inshallah I'll provide the organizers the links to these resources. In addition to that, for today, there are three primary resources that I've used. One is the Safa Sajadiyya of Imam Zayn al Abideen alayhi salam. This is an excellent resource, and I particularly recommend the translation of William Chittick. It's quite nice rendering, and it's also available on alislam.org, so I'll share the link to that as well. And there's a book by Baqir Sharif al-Sharafi, Baqir Sharif al-Qarashi, on the life of Imam Zayn al Abideen. It's quite a nice work, and I think there's also the text available online too. So I'll share that. And finally, when it comes to the Ahlul Bayt alayhim assalam, there's one alim in particular that I always find very informative, especially in bringing about the relevance of their lives. Whether or not you make taqlid of him is immaterial. Rather, I think all of us can benefit from his insights. And this is the late Muhammad Hussein Fadlallah, who has this has an area of expertise as far as the socio-political is concerned. And so that's something that he has a particular insight that I find fairly refreshing. And so if you ever want to research the lives of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim assalam, there are many resources, but you may want to have a look at his website. And usually what I do is I look at the dates of birth and the dates of death on the Islamic calendar, and look at his Friday khutbahs, because he usually kind of makes mention of them. So that is, I guess, some of my resources, and inshallah I'll share at least the texts with the organizers. And I've been asked to also share that epic battle montage. So this is before we actually begin the program proper, so I hope this isn't being docked from our time. But how yesterday at the end of the program I mentioned how within ourselves, just like how on the external plane, there's that epic battle between virtue and vice, good and evil, truth and falsehood, the lower self and the higher self, the animalistic tendencies and the angelic tendencies. So I don't know if this is something that many people will enjoy. Certainly, maybe some of the guys would. I thought maybe the hockey game would make the attendance suffer, but alhamdulillah, we got a few people here. So have a look. And when you see this film, it's not just about the violence and the CGI graphics of Lord of the Rings and whatnot, but it's visualize the forces within your own soul. And that's how I saw it. What is probably occurring within our own souls, and it's really a question of which of the forces that are dominating. I guess maybe just as a side note, the authors to some of these works, J.R.R. Tolkien and who's the author of Narnia series? Lewis, C.S. Lewis. They come from a very Christian perspective, and a lot of these works of fiction are actually have Christian and somewhat spiritual, religious undertones, so that what you see as these works of fiction have some inner messages that they like to convey. So that's just a point of interest. So I think now, inshallah, I'll begin with today's topic proper. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. I begin in the In the name of Allah, most compassionate, most merciful. All praise be to Allah, Lord of the universe, and may the peace and blessings be upon the noblest of prophets and messengers, and upon his members of his household, the good, the pure. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, خُذِ الْعَفْوَ وَأْمُرْ بِالْعُرْفِ وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْجَاهِلِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, adopt a policy of excusing the faults of others, bid what is right, and turn away from the ignorant. Perhaps it's not inappropriate for me to state that the opening of the Iraqi parliament this year had actually opened with this very verse by one of the elder statesmen there, Dr. Ibrahim al-Jafri, who was also, I guess, I believe in the 90s, was a guest of this very center. And you know, he's the former prime minister in Iraq. So I think it's very appropriate, you know, for the Iraqi context, you know, to adopt that policy of excusing the faults of others, you know, to bid what is right and turn away from the ignorant. But you know, the timing of that speech leads me to presume that his inspiration was none other than Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam, Imam Zayn al Abideen, who used this very same verse when someone had slandered him and someone was abusive towards him. And when the Imam alayhi salam had turned away from him, the person became very aggressive and he says, "Hey you, I'm speaking to you." And to this the Imam responded with this beautiful verse that, you know, adopt a policy of you know, forgiving, excusing the faults of others, bid what is right, and turn away from the ignorant. So, you know, today's topic is a look at the life of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam vis-a-vis the greater jihad, the greater struggle in the inward plane, as well as the lesser struggle, the lesser jihad, you know, on the social plane. And here's the Imam alayhi salam who, you know, often, unfortunately, has been confined and imprisoned within the confinements of tragedy. You know, often when we think about Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam, it's within the context of Karbala, it's within the context of Sham. But here's, you know, a great personality who had lived many years after Karbala. You know, he was in his early 20s then, and he led, you know, a life. But, you know, what happened to the rest of his life? You know, often, you know, we sort of gloss over it, as we do with many of our great personalities, where we confine them to the to the confinement of tragedy and miracles only, rather than looking at the lessons of their lives and how they are relevant to us today. So what I thought I'd do today is, you know, look at the various virtues that Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam had perfected within himself, and that he attempted to educate and to guide within the social realm. He's, you know, a great personality with, you know, an abundance of virtues. And so, you know, let's just go through some of them. And as opposed to yesterday, where, you know, there was perhaps an element of theory with some examples, inshallah today I'm going to switch things around and have more narratives rather than theory, so that we can connect with the Imam alayhi salam and to absorb, you know, from his lifestyle, especially if we refer to ourselves as his followers. It's not enough for us to say that we love the Imam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, قُلْ إِن تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهِ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهِ. Say, if you love Allah, follow me. That is the messenger of God. Allah will love you. So lip service isn't enough. You know, we have to step in the footsteps of the Imam, not to precede them, not to lag behind, not to be more kingly than the kings themselves. And this is, you know, if this is, you know, who we are as their followers, then we have to exhibit the signs of that. So let's begin with patience. Now, as you know, the Imam alayhi salam was one who was afflicted with a great deal of tribulations and trial. And as opposed to that breaking him and to, affecting him psychologically, rather we see that he was able to bear it with a great deal of patience, with a great deal of fortitude. His whole life has been a life of trial. From his childhood, he was witness to the, to the occurrence of the martyrdom of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, his great-grandfather. And after that, the trials of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, and what had occurred, and his death as well. And that for his own father, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And he went through all of these stages, where the patience was instilled within his own soul. Here's a man whose patience was prophetic. When you look at the lives of of the Prophet Ayub, of the Prophet Luqman, and see how they were patient through their trials and tribulations, we see that element in Imam as-Sajjad alayhi salam. He alayhi salam says, I believe during Karbala, perhaps during Karbala, maybe not, but he says, we, the members of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, the members of the household, obey Allah in what we like and praise Him in what we dislike. So he saw patience as strength and impatience as weakness. Now, it isn't often that we find this, has an area of expertise as far as the socio-political is concerned. And so, that's something that he has a, particular insight that I find, fairly refreshing. And so, if you ever want to research the lives of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, there are many resources, but you may want to have a look at his website. And in addition to that, for today, there are three primary resources that I've used. One is the Sahif as-Sajjadiyya of Imam Zayn al Abideen alayhi salam. This is an excellent resource, and I particularly recommend the translation of William Chittick. It's quite nice rendering, and it's also, and yesterday's topic of Jihad al-Akbar and Jihad al-Asghar, number of resources, but the ones that I recommend the most is the 40 Hadith of Imam Khomeini and Spiritual Discourses by Shahid Mutahari. Both of these are available online, and inshallah I'll provide the organizers the links to these resources. There's one alim in particular that I always find very informative, especially in bringing about the relevance of their lives. Whether or not you make taqlid of him is immaterial. Rather, I think all of us can benefit from his insights. And this is the late Muhammad Hussein Fadlallah, who has this available on alislam.org. So I'll share the link to that as well. And there's a book by Baqir Sharif al-Sharafi, Baqir Sharif al-Qarashi, on the life of Imam Zayn al Abideen. It's quite a nice work, and I think there's also the text available online too. So I'll share that. And finally, when it comes to the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam,